Hey guys, I'm Chris. Welcome to my channel. So today's project is figuring out why my wife's car is not working or not starting. It started about 8 years ago. When we first bought it, we couldn't start it because it was really cold. After it warmed up for a while, and got to about 0 degrees, we live up in Canada, so it gets kind of cold up here. Even with 2 or 3 extra booster batteries, it just wouldn't start. So we got it warmed up and then it started, and really ever since we bought it, we've never had a problem starting it except for when we left it out in the cold for 4 or 5 hours. So when it was like -15, it just wouldn't start. Even with a booster, it wouldn't start. Even with a van hooked up and an extra battery hooked up, it just wouldn't start. It would just crank really slow. So anyways, we didn't use it we don't use the car very often. So what we decided to do is just not to worry about it and just not use it when it's really cold, or at least not park it for half a day or a whole day outside. If we park it in the garage, it always started. So anyways, so today it just stopped working. And the interesting thing was that it looked like the battery was draining. And the solenoid was clicking. It would make this sound, and that sounds like the battery is low and the solenoid wants to engage and then disengage and re-engage and disengage, and it keeps doing that, but it just wouldn't start. So after I tested a whole bunch of other electrical things, I came to the conclusion that it probably will be the starter. So ended up taking the starter out, and it was actually pretty easy to do. And so here I'm going to show you how to bench test a starter for my 2006 PT Cruiser. So here's the starter, and there's 2 parts to it. This is the solenoid, which switches the power on and off, and it also makes this little gear jump out and engage the ring that starts the actual motor. And then when the starter is off, the gear goes back so it doesn't constantly run while the engine is running. That's the job of the solenoid. The second part that the solenoid does, it turns the power. It's like a big switch that has power that comes from the battery, goes through the solenoid, and then comes out and goes into the motor right here to actually crank the motor. So the way that I test this is I have a battery hooked up. This is actually the one from the Cruiser itself, the PT Cruiser. Here's where it was. Took it right out, made sure it was fully charged, and I hook up the positive to where the positive terminal comes from the battery if it's in the car. Okay, and then the negative, I just hook it up to the ground, or just the body of the motor. Now I could use a screwdriver, but I just have an adjustable wrench here. What I want to do is I want to make contact between this main post here and the little solenoid activation switch. And if I put it on here and then slide it over, there you go. That's exactly what it used to sound like. You see that? And now that it's a fully charged battery, you can actually see that when I make contact, this ring gets pushed out, and then it's supposed to start turning. Oh, look at that. It actually works. But what I found, this is really why this got me. It would start on a perfectly full charge, or if you boost it. Again, provided that it's not too cold, like I had previously mentioned. But as soon as I start it once, and I don't let the alternator charge the battery enough, it doesn't have enough power, and it doesn't work. And so I'm going to bring it into the starter guy tomorrow, and my guess is that this starter is shot. Another thing you can test is if you take your positive, and instead of hooking it up to the positive terminal, if you only make connection to the activation wire, you should see this little gear jump out, but the motor would not start. There you go. See that? So I make contact, and it comes out. And that is the job of the solenoid, is to push this gear out and to put it back when the starter is not in use. But again, if I hook it up to the main post and I make contact, it works now. And if I was to start this car here once or twice and the battery wasn't perfectly full, it wouldn't start. And my guess is that this starter is shot, and that is probably also the reason why it wouldn't start when it was really, really cold outside. Even if I had all the power available, 2 or 3 batteries hooked up at the same time, it would not start. So now that we tested the solenoid part here, by making sure that this wheel gets engaged, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a direct connection to the solenoid output, which goes directly over to the motor. Now, if I put my positive battery cable on this post, it should not engage the wheel. It should not push up the wheel, but the motor should still start. Let's try that. And it works. Okay, so I went to the shop, the starter shop, and he had a look at the starter, and he said, yeah, it's definitely shot. So when you compare how much it wiggles here to the new one, which does no wiggling at all, that's the one thing. And I'm going to put the new one in, start the car, and then hopefully I'll get a chance to take this one apart and have a look and see what it looks like inside. Okay, so I finally got the car to work, and I know what the problem was. And this is a tricky one. It was actually a combination of 3 different things. The first thing was the starter was on its way out. It was kind of working, but kind of not really that well. The second thing that was the problem was the battery was on its way out. So it was kind of working, but not really. So it tested positive, it tested fine when I tested the battery, and it said everything's good. But it wasn't. And the starter kind of was okay, but it wasn't. And then the third thing was, there's a little clip that goes on to the solenoid switch on the starter, and that one was really, really badly corroded. So sometimes it would make contact, sometimes it would not. And combine all those 3 things together, it took me 2 nights to figure this thing out. But it's all working, it's starting perfectly. I got a new battery, got a new starter, and I fixed the alligator, or that little clip there for the solenoid, and everything works perfect now. So holy cow, that was a tricky one. Anyways, I hope this is going to help somebody. Don't forget to subscribe. I really appreciate it. And thanks for watching. I'll see you later.